AskReddit. Were you ever close to being killed or raped or kidnapped or robbed? If so, how did you avoid it or get away? I have been shot at before. I avoided it by running, losing a shoe as I did, and gashing my foot pretty badly. I had a gun put to my face, but I just told the guy, whose very intense conversation I was interrupting, that I didn't have a phone. True, and I was going to sit behind the nearest tire and finish my juice, which I did. No one was shot. I got held up at gunpoint one night while jogging. I was doing a late night run to try and help with my mounting depression/insomnia. I had been thinking about killing myself for a while, and the one thing that was holding me back was the idea of my family thinking they had failed me, so I figured, win-win, right? I asked the guy to shoot me and started walking towards him. I was asking nicely too, but I think it freaked him out because he started screaming at me and saying shit like take another step and I'll fucking shoot you. So I kept taking more steps. He turns and runs and I start running after him asking him to shoot me. It was really dark and I never saw a gun, so maybe I just called his bluff, or maybe he just didn't want to kill anyone. Either way, not my proudest moment, running after my would-be mugger, crying. That was a long and sad run. When I was a young boy, probably 12 or 13, my dad and I took a spontaneous vacation to Gillith, Minnesota. Since I'd never been there, I'd honestly never been on vacation before, so I was so excited to experience being somewhere awesome, just for the fun of it. We had decided before leaving that would save money by skipping the hotel and sleeping in the truck in a rest lot. He'd sleep on an air mattress in the back of the truck with a topper, and I would sleep in the cab. We found a rest stop in town and went to sleep. At one point in the middle of the night I had to use the restroom, so I left the cab and used the men's room at the rest stop. There was one other guy in there using a urinal. The best word I can use to describe him was soggy. He looked like a mess. I'm pee shy, so I just stood at a different urinal for a few seconds and promptly left. He was blatantly watching me the whole time. I get about halfway to the truck when I see he's following me. I begin to run, and so does he. I managed to barely get into the truck on time to lock the door behind me, where he's now pulling on the handle, breathing heavily. I begin to yell, "Dad, wake up, and he pops up from the back like a meerkat. The guy locks eyes with my dad and quickly makes a 180 into a minivan, and they speed off. I've honestly never given it all that much thought since it happened, probably just tried to repress it or something. Having typed it out, I'm kind of shaking a little. 13-year-old me almost got kidnapped at a rest stop in the middle of the night. When I was in my 20s, I got home from a business trip in the middle of the day and was driving back to my office from the airport, which involved being on the interstate for 50 miles or so. This was in the 80s, and cell phones weren't a thing yet. An old car with two men inside starts following me, then they pull up beside me. The man in the passenger seat tells me that one of my back wheels is about to come off the car. Okay, well, my car was fairly new and was running fine as far as I could tell. No handling problems, nothing. I remembered that an upcoming exit had a full service gas station with an attached mechanics shop, so I exited there and the men in the other car followed me. I rolled up to the entrance to the mechanics shop, where I was sure there would be people around, and opened my window. Out walked this absolute mountain of a mechanic. I mean, he was over 6 feet tall and a good 275 pounds. I told him that the men in the car who followed me said my back wheel was about to come off, but I didn't think there was a problem. Anyway, giant mechanic man started ambling over to the car that had followed me, and they very quickly hauled ass out of there and got back on the interstate. I wish I could have got their number plates. I didn't even think about how sketchy the whole situation was until it was over. When I was in middle school, I came home from school one day and noticed something odd in the big glass window at the front of the house. Our back door was wide open, so I figured one of my parents were home early from work. I walked in the house to see it was totally trashed. I then heard voices at the back door. It definitely wasn't either of my parents. I then dropped my bag and ran out the front door. I ran down to a friend's house, which was a few houses down. I then called the cops and said my house was being robbed. Police arrived and the guy or guys were gone, along with all the stuff. Take note that I was like 13 or 14 at the time, so it wasn't like I could do much. About 6 months ago I was walking to a friend of mine's house to go hang out. Now to get to her house you gotta walk through downtown, which isn't all that sketchy, and it was the middle of the day, so I wasn't worried about it whatsoever. I'm walking down the sidewalk when I notice out of the corner of my eye that there is a guy trailing behind me. He was a comfortable space away from me, so I wasn't freaked out at first. Not till I heard him pick up his pace. Now at this point I'm right in front of City Hall. There is an alleyway that leads to the City Hall parking lot, and my friend Giovanni, who has been known to knock a couple heads, lives directly behind the parking lot. The alleyway is pretty big and very well lit, as well as a nice security camera hiding in the corner, so if this guy tried any shit he was on camera. I make a quick turn into this alley and manage to make it into the parking lot. I'm getting ready to jog over to Giovanni's house when I feel a hand wrap around mine. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier, I was carrying my school issued laptop with me, so he grabbed a hold of the hand that was carrying the laptop. When he grabbed me, I instinctively turn around to face him when I barely have enough time to react, and he punches me across the face. I fall to the ground, but because I tensed up, I had a tight grip on the laptop. He leaned over me in an attempt to grab it. My body's adrenaline kicked in, and I kicked him in the groin as hard as I possibly could. He fell to his knees immediately, and I took that opportunity to scramble away and stand up. I quickly took my laptop case in both hands and smashed him as hard as I could across the face with it. I didn't look back as I ran out the way I came, screaming and crying, before people in a nearby restaurant poked their head out and brought me inside and called the police. To this day I think of all the things I could have or should have done differently. I also think about if he would have killed me over a laptop. Scary world out there. I've been robbed once, mostly because I got lost and walked into the wrong part of New York on my own, not knowing that I should steer clear of that area. Was threatened by 2 people with knives, handed over something like $200 I had on me. They didn't believe that I didn't have anything else. I had a cell phone and a watch, but both were of the $10 Walmart variety and they didn't want those, so they rifled through my pockets and took my passport, tore my t-shirt in the process, pushed me into a wall and then scrammed. Luckily I didn't have anything worse than a few scrapes and bruises. I made a report to the police, got told I was an idiot, and then went to the German embassy, where I was also told I was an idiot, but at least got a new passport. Edit. I see my original post gave something of a wrong impression of the New York City police. In my original post, was typing this out on my phone and trying to keep it brief as a result. They never actually called me an idiot. The police officer very politely pointed out that this wasn't the best neighborhood of New York, and that it had a history of crime, and that it wasn't the best idea to be walking through it alone after dark and looking like I was obviously a tourist. I then said something like, "So you're saying I was a bit of an idiot?" To which the officer replied, "You said that, sir, not me." Trust your gut if you think someone is a creep. Also, teenage male rapists are sometimes less smart when all their blood is in their dick. I think a sophomore in high school, maybe junior, it was a long time ago, and was invited to a casual hangout with about 5 other kids from school. One of the guys there had just graduated, Tim, and the another was a few years older, and it was his house. I'd never really liked him, because he would always do this thing where he blocked me and when talking to me by putting his hands against a wall or lockers and lock his elbows, so I'd have to awkwardly duck under them to get out of the conversation. I asked where the restroom was, and Tim offered to show me. He led me to a room, half pushed me in, and shut the door, and locked it behind us. He then tried to rape me, at first more coerce me into sex, then, when I refused, getting physical, and pushing me down, and trying to undo my pants. I fought and told him to get off me, and tried everything I could to get him off me, but he was just stronger. Pretty much just him repeating "you know you wanted" as he was pinning me down as I struggled. I had an idea, and instead of fighting, kissed him back, and asked to get on top. We were both still clothed at this point, but my jeans were undone, and he let me on top of him, but was still gripping my arms. I kissed him again, and said let me take my shirt off. Baby, he let me go, and leaped off the bed, ran to the door. He got there, just as I opened it, and he slammed it shut. I tried literally the exact same tactic again, and the second time I got out of the room and into an adjacent one and locked the door. He knocked and tried to coax me out saying he's sorry and would stop, but he couldn't help himself, etc. I stayed in the room until he apparently got bored and I could see him leave the doorway. I silently slipped out and left through the back door, leaving my shoes and purse behind. Where was everyone else? Who knows? Never hung out with that crowd again, and a guy friend returned for my stuff.